Hello everyone, I've just played through the first movement of Beethoven's Opus 109 Piano Sonata in E major. This is the first of the last three piano sonatas, so it is the 30th, I think that's right. I think he wrote it in 1822 when he was about 52. Correct me if I'm wrong, I think that's approximately right. It is, of course, marvellous, marvellous piece. It's really trite of me to even say this, but the last three piano sonatas are astonishing in every way. They are generally considered sort of close to miraculous late work of Beethoven's. These are the very greatest of his piano sonatas, I think. And I've just done something that is sort of blasphemous within the world of Beethoven performance. I tend to do something on this channel which slightly subverts the classical tradition of only presenting your work after conceivably years of development and practice and preparation. That's a tradition that I, of course, admire immensely, and it gives rise to astonishing performances. But the problem is that it also gives the impression of absolute perfection in all respects, and a sort of weird, over-polished, over-veneered thing where you're never allowed really to demonstrate musicianship in a spontaneous way. I think that's why I react against it, rather. So what I've just done is I've sat down, and I'm sorry if you can believe me or not, but I have just sat down with this wonderful piece and played it through. And yes, there were mistakes, and yes, the performance was not as well thought out as it might have been.
Not quite my tempo.
But I just wanted to enter into that in the moment creative response to Beethoven's wonderful music. And in doing that, I've exposed myself to the possibility that you'll think it was ridiculous. The piano's not really in tune, I made mistakes, there are all sorts of issues with the performance. No doubt there were, and there were all sorts of amazing artists who've recorded it historically and in the present day who do it better, and I fully acknowledge that. So don't bother to write comments about how out of tune the piano is. I know that it's out of tune, or particularly about the performance, unless there's something really important you want to say. Feel free to comment on the performance, but don't bother to compare it with Wilhelm Kampfer, or indeed the new performance by Víkingur Ólafsson, because I know these pianists are vastly finer pianists than I am. On the subject of Víkingur Ólafsson, his performance has recently been released and I think has been streamed many hundreds of thousands, millions probably, of times. So I love the fact that he's a pianist who is enabling this repertoire to be widely heard. That's amazing. His performance, I think, is beautiful. He's a pianist I admire immensely, but I also think, and here I'm going to dare to criticise him. And by the way, I feel that what gives me the right to criticise him is at least I can play the piece. Most music critics couldn't play the piece. And I'm not here to denigrate music critics. They have their place and their function, and good for them.
The musical growth rate of this band cannot even be charted. They are treading water in a sea of retarded sexuality and bad poetry.
Well, that's nitpicking, isn't it?
But I do feel that sometimes with criticism, it's important to demonstrate that you can do it before you start to criticise other people. So my position with Víkingur is wonderful pianist. I think he slightly over-romanticises this piece. I think he rather irons out the idiosyncrasies of Beethoven's often, yes, eccentric textures, rhythms, dynamics, and creates this beautiful polished thing. And it is beautiful, no question. But it's important to remember with Beethoven that there's this wonderful dialectic between the lyrical and the abrasive. There is in that piece. As a person, as well as in his music, Beethoven was abrasive and eccentric, no question about that. In his music, there is this wonderful balance between the two. There is this beautiful lyricism, but it's not just this wonderful poetic thing that I think Víkingur Ólafsson makes of it. Of course it is that, but there's also this almost mysterious strangeness about it. In the late sonatas, Beethoven was probing in a kind of visionary way and in lots of directions. The architecture is absolutely astounding. So in this first movement, it's really a kind of prelude. Again, there's a dialectic here, a formal one. On the one hand, it's in sonata form, classical sonata form, and on the other, I think Beethoven very much had in his mind a Bach prelude. He was brought up on Bach preludes. He had lessons with a teacher who made him learn all 48 of Bach's preludes and fugues in the Well-Tempered Clavier. So he knew that repertoire like the back of his hand, sort of literally, from childhood. He knew that repertoire. And the idea of the prelude as something that introduces something more formal is something that I think Beethoven brings into his sonata composition. He does it even way back in the Quasi-Una Fantasia sonatas. The Moonlight Sonata is one of those. The first movement is a bit like a prelude. And this is a much more mature example from the end of his life of a first movement acting as a kind of prelude to the movements that follow it, which we won't have time to look at today. So it's like a prelude in the sense that you have this beautiful texture with these sort of up and down semi-quaver patterns, somewhat like you get in Bach. You know, Bach will spin out a pattern like this and take it on a journey. That's how Bach tends to write. Then you go on a journey, and then you modulate from key to key, but you retain the pattern, and that's sort of what Beethoven does. He sets up a sort of toccata-like pattern. It's not in a Baroque style. It's in his own unique idiom. What is Beethoven's idiom? Poised between classicism and romanticism, I would say, but a burgeoning kind of Beethovenian lyrical version of romanticism that isn't really like anyone else. I mean, you hear traces of it, of course, in Schubert, Mendelssohn, Schumann in the next generation, but of course it's uniquely his own as well. Right, let me explain sonata form. So in sonata form you have a first subject that's in the home key, and then you have a contrasting second subject that's in the dominant. Then you have a development section in the middle, and then you have the recapitulation where the first and second subjects return. So in this piece, the fascinating thing is that the first subject is absolutely tiny. It's just this. That's it. Then the second subject, which is an adagio. So it goes into a slow tempo for the second subject. Unprecedented, I think, that idea of going into a sort of slow movement as the second subject. And the first subject itself is based on a sort of rule of octave improvisatory pattern where you just have a descending E major scale. There you go, you've got harmonised a descending E major scale. That's the sort of thing Beethoven would have learned to do as a boy, is improvise around these standard patterns. This is a standard improvisational pattern. He uses the same pattern in a much earlier sonata, the beautiful little G major sonata from more than a decade earlier, this one. So you've got the same, exactly the same basic shape. And so you start off with this improvisatory pattern which forms a very, very quick preludium. And then the second subject is in this much freer adagio. And it starts off in C sharp minor, though it is the relative minor. C sharp minor, now it turns to the dominant. And here we go, now we're on the dominant. So now this is where it does something very surprising. He unleashes these wonderful arpeggios. And here's a weird thing. What the hell is that? Now, any listener to Beethoven in the 1820s would have already been somewhat perplexed by what was happening. But at least you've got this tune that goes... And then the listener of the period would think as soon as he does this, we're coming back to the same tune, and it would do this. Do you see what I mean? A sort of embellished version, probably at a higher octave. He doesn't do that. He suddenly sidesteps down to E flat major or D sharp major, and then comes back to the dominant. Isn't that wonderful? So the wonderful thing is you're going there, isn't that weird? D sharp and then back to B major. It's this marvellous kind of system of almost pun-like shifts of harmony that in themselves have a sort of stomach churning quality. It's magnificent. And then we come back to B major as if nothing has happened. We reach the 6/4, the second inversion. In classical music, that always precedes the cadence that's going to finish the exposition. When he gets there, he has a little, beautiful little cadenza. And then we go into the development section, and the development section is this wonderful little toccata which carries us through several keys, but it's really functioning like a brilliantly realised chorale. Now, when I say that there's a chorale right from the beginning, you know, the pattern at the beginning is essentially a sort of virtuosic presentation of a chorale. And here we have it too. Well, that's just and then you could play the whole development section like a chorale, because that's sort of what it is. And eventually it reaches that F sharp, which takes us to B, which is the dominant. So as soon as you hear a dominant, you know you're coming home. The recap is about to happen, and the right hand rises higher and higher. It's typical of late Beethoven. You get this big gap between left and right hands, and then this business kicks off. You know, that's really a marvelous way of saying, look, we're going home, and here it comes. And of course, in its recap form, it's this triumphant thing with the two hands a long way apart. And then that, he does it very differently from the first time, with the left hand taking over. And then it takes us towards the second subject, this time in F sharp minor, which is going to lead us home this way. I'll show you how. Towards E major, there's E major. So we're in our home key. And at this point, he does a wonderful new thing. He takes us to C major. Fantastic, that's C major. And then back to E major. Exactly the same kind of thing, this musical pun thing where you shift semitones around, suddenly new tonal areas open up, and then you go, no, actually, I meant that. Home key, E major. Just by turning, it's typical of Beethoven. C major could turn to a key that's the mediant. In other words, it can turn to a key that's a third away. C major to E major simply by moving the middle semitone down and the bottom semitone up, and there you are, you're in the home key. It's this wonderful sort of, there we are, we're in E major. And it's at this point he unleashes an even richer cadenza. Here we go, and it's almost fluttering down the keyboard, and eventually we get this beautiful, great open sonority, and that takes us into this lovely, tender, intimate conversation between the two hands, with the left hand following the right, and then finally it just sort of peels back, and then the chorale, which has been running all through the piece in a sort of concealed form, is now made explicit as Beethoven reveals it. And this is why this is such a touching moment, because we suddenly realise that this has been here all along. This beautiful, I mean, I call it a chorale. Yes, it is a chorale, but it's also some kind of wonderful song that Beethoven's a personal thing that he seems to be saying to us. And then this beautiful coda with the da-da. Beethoven loves this thing where you take the sixth to the fifth, and sometimes it's minor, and sometimes it's major, minor. In other words, minor sixth going to the dominant, major sixth going to the dominant, and then he just floats up to the top of the piano. The figuration, the left hand comes above the right, isn't that lovely? And then the final chord just off the beat. It's not like he used to do where you'd have an assertive first beat. It's just off the beat. There's a magic to that, isn't there? That wonderful, soft second beat of the... Tell me what you think about that. There's something in late Beethoven, he does this all the time, where there's an emphasis on the offbeat and it does something different to the music. Fabulous. This is music of the most incredible kind, and it's a privilege to be able to play it. Do check out Víkingur Ólafsson's CD and let me know what you think of it. There's no need to be mean about him. I've seen one critic online being very mean. I think he absolutely doesn't deserve that. He's a pianist of the very highest calibre. His playing is absolutely beautiful. And while I have reservations about his performance, I can't deny its poetry or its sort of heart-stopping beauty at times. So well done him. He is recording with amazing equipment and an amazing piano, rather better than mine, but that doesn't mean to say I could match him if I was using his equipment. So, well, thank you for listening. If you like the channel and the content and you want more of this kind of thing, let me know, and do like and subscribe. Feel free to donate to the channel. We could always do with more donations. Let us know if you appreciate Loki and his contribution. And do let Ian know that he's doing a good job with the fabulous editing on these videos. And yes, if you're feeling generous, feel free to donate to the channel. The details are below. Thank you for watching.